Hello, Internet. I hope everyone can hear me properly. Welcome to another Pioneer live stream, a demo live stream, in fact. What you'll be seeing today is a bunch of our best pioneers and their companies talk a little bit about the work that they're building, whilst also getting interviewed by other extremely lovable founders that are in our kind of ecosystem. Before we get started, if we have anyone kind of new joining us that doesn't really know what we're doing here, maybe you found this link somewhere on Twitter or YouTube suggested it to you, welcome. Pioneer is an attempt to kind of bring a lot of the magic of Silicon Valley to the internet, to kind of bleed and inject, that the same sense of optimism and creativity that one gets, when being in the great cities of the world, in London, in Palo Alto, San Francisco, in many ways in Beijing, and kind of recreate that on the internet. So we're kind of accelerator that's on the web, if that makes sense. Our city is the internet, and our citizens are indeed citizens of the internet. We've funded over 100 pioneers from around the world, almost 40 countries. And it takes place, I highly recommend, if you haven't had a chance to check it out, it takes place over this kind of fun, interactive online experience that's part game, part startup accelerator. And what you're going to be seeing today are people who've effectively won that game that are going to be presenting their work. Very much the long-term goal for what we're trying to do here at Pioneer isn't necessarily just to accelerate, but indeed to generate. We want to take people that are kind of working on interesting projects and convince them to start real companies, real businesses on the internet. We think the world could stand to have a significantly larger number of startups, more variety, more choice, more options, as opposed to a few large incumbents. And so that's the future we're trying to create. And I'm excited to give you a sneak preview of it today. Today we'll be presenting 13 pioneers, 8 different companies from 8 different countries. And they will be presenting both what they're doing and getting interviewed by a bunch of hosts that I think you'll enjoy watching. Jack Altman, the founder of Lattice, which is one of the kind of leading team management software companies right now in kind of the startup world. Rahul Vohra, a founder of Superhuman, which is kind of the Porsche 911 email client that's certainly used in kind of the startup ecosystem. John Kim, the founder of Sendbird, also previously a #1 pro gamer, so kind of a fun intersection that speaks to I think a lot of our hearts. Kevin Hartz, the founder of Eventbrite, publicly traded company that lets folks manage the ticketing around events. And so these hosts will be interviewing the pioneers, which should be quite exciting to watch. And then I highly recommend you stay tuned to the end, where Kevin will be pitching Eventbrite as if it were a seed startup, which I think will be fascinating. Now, with all of that being said, I'm just kind of the figurehead for this organization. There's a lot of folks powering things behind the scenes. One of them is a gentleman by the name of Jackson, who is going to be one of the pilots behind this aviation experiment today. And I'd like to hand it over to Jackson to walk you through a little bit more of the mechanics, and then we'll take it off from there. Jackson, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Daniel. All right, so it is my job to bring us through some of the format today. This is not your regular YouTube video. This is something much more interactive and fun. We have a few features for you. These include, you can chat with any pioneer at any given point throughout this event. If you are watching through our website, you'll see that each pioneer team has their own chat room. That is open now, that will be open during their presentation and at the end. So feel free to have fantastic conversations in there throughout, ask questions, hype them up, etc. We also have a follows feature. So for anybody who would like to follow up with any of our pioneers after the event, that is like, would you like to give them encouragement, to say, to give them feedback on their presentation, to join their mailing list, to talk further. We have a number of investors in the audience as well. That'd be a great button for you in case you want to continue the conversation. We also have a points feature. So everybody here, in the spirit of Pioneer, this is very gamified, just like everything else. So you all have 200 points to distribute at your discretion. That is 20 clicks to give to your favorite presentations along the way. So make them count. In terms of the format of the presentations themselves, as Daniel mentioned, it's going to be about 2 minutes of showing what they're working on, each pioneer, followed by about a 5-minute fireside chat. That is it for me. I will just be guiding us from presentation to presentation here. And without further ado, I think we should go ahead and get started. So I would love to bring up Jack Altman, our first host today. Jack.
Hello.
How you doing?
Doing great. I'm excited to do this.
Yeah, this is great. Welcome. And your first pioneer today is Dave Jeffery, who is from Ireland and will be presenting ToDesktop.
Hey Jack, hey everyone. So I'm Dave from Ireland and I'm working on ToDesktop. So what ToDesktop does is it converts your web app to a desktop app, and then you can deploy that desktop app to your customers. So what are the benefits of a desktop app over a web app? Let's take a look at the data. So users of Front's desktop app spend 34% more time on app than their web users. And Slight's desktop app triggers 30% more actions, more user actions than their web app. So what does this mean? So if users are spending more time using the app, then empirically we know that this leads to an increase in user retention. So let's jump in and let's look at a demo. Here's one of our customers. This is Interplay running in a web browser. What we can do is we can take Interplay's URL and we can enter it into ToDesktop. ToDesktop's going to try and guess the correct logo and the details from the app from the URL. But what we can do is we can supply our own logo, and we can see what that's going to look like in the dock on Windows and Mac. And then we can enable a ton of options. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to turn on transparent title bar and make it look a little bit more native. And then when we're happy with that, we hit build and our app is ready to go for Windows, Mac, and Linux in just a few minutes. So this is what it looks like as a desktop app. There's no distractions. So we compare this to the distracting web interface that I had before. My icon is now in the dock, so it can be opened in just one click. And I have access to APIs that web apps don't. For example, I can trigger a native desktop notification. So we started out showing how a desktop app will increase time spent on your app, increase engagement, and increase user retention. Then we showed you that you can get an icon on your dock, so your app can be accessible in one click from anywhere. We showed you the more focused user interface. So the idea here is that you've no browser toolbars, no tabs, no distractions, and access to native desktop APIs. We're currently doing 5K a month, and we're growing at 60% month over month. So everything I've shown you here is live and ready to go at ToDesktop.com. We've also got a product that will take your web app and convert it into a menu bar or tray application. And if you have a desktop app already that you built without ToDesktop, then you can use our CLI. So that's going to take care of installers, auto updates, and crash reports for you. So look, we're all living in a world now where we're working from home, where everyone is moving to desktop. If time on app is important to you, if user activity is important to you, if user retention is important to you, then you should consider using us. That's all I got. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Well, Dave, this is awesome. I think this is like the type of technology that you see where you're like, wow, if that really works, a ton of people would want to use this. So I think my first question is like, how robustly does this work? Is this something that a startup will use, and then if they prove traction with their desktop app, then they'll want to take it in-house and build it? Is this something that they install and then it'll last forever? Like, how robust is this tech? Like, how far will it go?
Yeah, so like as I showed you, the first step is you just take your web app URL, you put it into desktop, you build it, you can then distribute it to your customers. And then so we've got a few steps after that if you want to really grow with your application. So what you can do, I'll just show back on my screen sharing here just to show you a couple of things. So for example, let's say we want to do some more desktop stuff. So if we have existing web app code, so in our web app, let's say something happens, and I can use my existing web app code, but I put my desktop logic inside of a window ToDesktop conditional. So the idea here is that I can make my icon bounce, and I can put a little label on it. So the idea is that your web app is your core competency. That's the thing you spend all your time on. So that should still be the case. But you can add these little snippets of desktop specific logic, and you still have one repository. You still have one place you're using it. And then if at some point in time you want to eject out of ToDesktop, what you can do is you can use our CLI product. And that means that we still take care of the auto updates, the installers. We still take care of code signing, which is absolutely horrible. And we spin up our crash report server for you. So there's a whole process right from the start where you just enter a URL all the way through where you can eject out the other end, and you can effectively own your desktop app.
That's awesome. So you have 57 customers already. How did you get those? And did those customers already have desktop apps, or are they all people who had only a web app and you were their first desktop app experience?
So for our web app to desktop product, which is the one we showed there, they all came through word of mouth. They all came through, well, initially through Product Hunt, and the majority of them would be small startups. So I guess we think of them as the next, like the next Slack, the next Spotify. So that's kind of where it makes sense for that product, companies that don't already have a desktop app. But then for our CLI product, what we found is that existing customers, so like existing customers already have a desktop app, we can just reach out to them. So we've been in the last few weeks, we've been reaching out to customers who have Electron apps, Tandem, Sunsama, Linear, companies like this, who are at kind of a seed stage. And for them, it's a no-brainer because they don't want to manage this infrastructure, right? They're application developers. They want to write application code. They don't want to be bothered with the auto update infrastructure or the code signing infrastructure. In the same way that for the web app, they don't want to rewrite AWS or whatever infrastructure they're running on.
Makes sense. How are you thinking about where this goes? Are you spending your time thinking about improving the existing CLI and conversion to desktop, or are you thinking about more products along these lines? What does the next year or two look like?
Yeah, so we're focusing on the CLI now, just because it's such an easy step to sell it. We can just reach out to people who already have desktop apps, and we can sell that. Like all growth so far has been 100% organic, no paid advertising, and like we feel that there's a few things we can do there. We can go freemium. I think that'll help us attract more users, and we can include branding on the free version. I think as well, like one step to growth is there's a huge piece around educating people. Like companies spend a lot of money on user retention and reducing churn. ToDesktop is a super low friction way to improve these metrics. So we need to get that message out there, and I think that's a good way for us to grow.
That makes a ton of sense. I'm getting the notification that our time is up. Dave, this is really cool. That growth is really impressive, and the product, most of all, is something that I think a lot of people could use. So I'm really impressed. That's awesome.
Awesome. Thanks, Jack.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dave. All right. Next up, we have Stas Kulesh presenting from Chile. He is originally from New Zealand, and he'll be presenting Karma. I want to remind everybody in the audience that you can, after each of these presentations, you can continue talking with Dave and Stas, etc., in the chats below. Take it away, Stas.
Hello, Jack. Thank you for having me. And I'm going to talk about Karma. Karma is the true bond for remote teams. Ironically, we got matched with you, and I think this is going to be very interesting. Research shows that employees have leave because they feel unappreciated, but let's scratch that. It's not right. COVID is here. Is your team okay? This is the main question that people are asking now. And many teams, they want to see how it was before and how it became afterwards and what it would be. It's all the uncertainty. That's why we think that Karma, that works smoothly on chats through the text interface, you just do it in the flow, on Slack, on Microsoft Teams. You get this card generated, and that is getting published into the public channel. Everybody sees what this Tom did for them. Awards, achievements, it's built on top of these beads of micro-feedback information that sits on the admin panel, and the managers, they can get all sorts of reports. It seems familiar, I guess. Why we think it's essential? We believe that a simple thank you, it goes a long way. Karma is for building stronger bonds between people, and especially during this remote work event that we're going through. I believe it will stay for some time. Long term, I think it's very important to keep people connected. More people appreciate each other, the more bonding they have. I tried to do this brainstorming, and you can see on the left, the reaction to chat is something that is very, very weak in terms of bond. It's a lazy kind of bonding. And then on the right-hand side, you can see that the building was named after you. The company is really caring about you, and someone probably named your child with you. So this is, we believe Karma sits somewhere in between, and we're not alone. Other companies, some of them are famous, pretty famous, they do this as well. And they introduced this a while ago, and it's been working well. Customers love this. It's a habitual thing. As soon as they get to understand why Karma is functional and how it helps them, they stay with us. The retention rate is very high, and NPS is quite high as well. We've got 200 paying teams in the freemium model, which supports 2,000 teams at this stage. We've been growing steadily despite the COVID event. We had a high churn last month, which I call it COVID churn. But overall, it's usually very low, below 1%. We want to go bigger. We want to grow bigger and take a part of the 30 billion market for employee-centric solutions, raising seed this year. There are some competitors on chats, and they have some of the features. We're trying to combine them all and build an all-in-one product. The team has been with the product since day one. Very solid, small, lean team. Thank you. That's it. Welcome to your questions.
Awesome. Looks great. And the product looks really nice. This is obviously something that we at Lattice are sort of adjacent to. So, and we also have had a Slack integration. So my first question is, how do you keep, and obviously you've done it, but I'm sort of curious to learn how you've managed to keep employees engaged in a Slack app. I think one of the places where a Slack app can go down is that people sort of forget to use it. How are you driving the retention that you're driving? Is it through notifications? Is it through the system of rewards? Like, what do you attribute that retention to?
Well, we're trying to make this as customizable as possible, and we're trying to explain that this is just a point system, and whatever you do with these points, you get different results. So some teams, they set the notifications. They want people to get weekly reports. They want to get these weekly like leaderboard card on this public channel, and they see these are the top people. Generally, the leaderboards idea, I think we're going slowly away of it because it promotes only the top 5, top 10, but in a company of 500, it doesn't really work. That's why we introduced these achievements. So everybody is a winner in some way or another. And with the achievements, people get notifications on the emails, and they get notified on Slack. Some teams, they want less of that, and they ask about this, and we are just tell them, go there and set your notifications right. And some teams, they actually asking us for more. So we're in a process of, the engagement is a big question. I'm sure you understand, and people do forget, but we tried it at Pioneer, and it worked in a month or so. There is a period of time when it becomes a habit. In a month or so, people start using it. Instead of just saying thanks or putting in reaction, there is a new like trophy, achievement, good, feel good kind of action that you can do, and that's Karma.
Got it. And so is most of what's coming out the other side is reward, things like dinners or books or events, or what are the things that you're seeing your customers most want to get?
Incredibly, yeah, it's a good question. We have the live demo online, and everybody's creating random rewards there, and we can see what they're doing. Today I saw a teacher set up the system for his students, saying that he would go and have a coffee with the group or with the person if they'd be good at learning. And that would be one item. There in Vietnam, I saw a company who promised that cruise, like ship cruise, taking them around Asia if they got enough points. So everybody's trying to get creative. It could be a book, it could be an Amazon gift card, or it could be a week off, you know?
I think this is like what you've built here, I think is a really nice insertion point. And speaking as someone who works in HR, I think having those insertion points and then expanding is important. And you talked about that. What are the other touch points, either things that are larger parts of the HR market or things that are sort of more necessities as an HR team to have? What are the expansions that you see over time, or is it more about just building into what you currently have got?
The essential, I think we lack at this stage, we lack the feedback module. There is no backwards link, and that's in progress. I guess we will get there at some point. We're thinking about it. We need to know what people think about it, because at the moment they only exchange these feats of appreciation between each other. There is no way we know what they think about the company. Are they happy working at the company? We can figure it out. And this is another thing, like we're trying to show on the reports how happy they are with the company, how they changed, and this is already in progress. Yeah, so feedback is something that we want to get started on, and that's the plan for this year.
Got it. And you talked about the importance of, as you go into large companies, because I think a lot of where these reward systems live are at larger companies. How do you make sure, like, what's the way that you contain this such that it's not one giant noisy chat, but is actually functioning as teams? Are you finding that product navigation to be working? Are you still figuring out how to make those silos? Like, how are you doing that?
Yeah, just yesterday we tried to solve this problem for Electronic Arts, and they have a sub team who's very happy with Karma, and they want to set their own rewards for this particular team within this division, within this department, within this organization. This is a huge problem, and it's like things wrapping into each other. This is something that we are trying to solve. For now, fortunately, we didn't have that many big companies working with us, so there was no bad user experience. But I guess, I mean, yeah, we will get there.
Yeah, you've got time to solve it, I guess. And as you get into these bigger companies, which will happen, you'll have time to get there. I'm getting the signal that our time's up. This is awesome. You've got great progress, really good looking product. And I think you're obviously tackling a big market. So way to go.
Thanks, Jack. Have a good day.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Stas. Thank you, Jack. We have one more for you. We have Aditya and Ankit. They will be presenting from India, and their project is Kaapi. Take it away, Kaapi team.
Hi, Jack. Hi, everyone. My name is Aditya. I've also got my co-founder on the call.
Hi, I'm Ankit, and we're from India.
So Kaapi is an employee feedback platform for remote teams. You know, today, if you're a remote manager, you spend a lot of time on Zoom calls, checking in with your team. There are employee feedback tools out there, but they can be pretty rigid, and they're built for the CEO or the VP of people function to send pulse surveys to the entire organization. This is how our Slack app solves the problem. It's pretty simple. Just add your team and tell us the problems you're facing. For example, maybe you're wondering if everyone in my team is on the same page about goals. Now, based on this context, Kaapi will design a personalized schedule for automatic check-ins with your team. So, for example, in this case, daily, it'll ask your employees for a 9 a.m. status update. And every 3 days, a different strategic question about their work. And by the way, these check-ins go to your employees, keeping in mind their local time zones. So that's one less meeting to schedule. Finally, Kaapi collects the incoming employee answers and delivers a summarized report to you about who said what and when. We opened our closed beta 2 weeks ago for a selected group of 10 teams. Currently, we have 70 employees engaging with the check-ins. We did $7,000 in revenue from our first customer, which is an annual contract of software and hands-on customer education. Managers love us for two things. One is the personalization, and the second is the ability to fit in where work already happens for them. And we want to continue doubling down on that. Previously, we founded a local services marketplace in India that grew to a 250-member team across the country. We're pretty excited about this space. And one day we hope to solve problems across the funnel, from onboarding remote employees to even, let's say, exit interviews. Thank you. That's it. Would love to answer any questions you might have.
Great. So it seems like there's two parts. There's the goals parts and the check-ins part. Is that about right?
We're still building the goals part. We're pretty much focused on check-ins and feedback as of now.
Got it. Okay. So the weekly check-in, I guess, is this to drives the like a stand-up or a one-on-one, or it's just that weekly sort of meeting. Is that about right?
You can customize the frequency of the check-ins. People use it for let's say weekly status updates, and also like regular recurring pulse check-ins also. How are you doing? Is there anyone in the company, in the team that you want to, you want to say kudos to, but you haven't been able to? Where are you stuck? Are you happy at work, etc.?
How would you say, when you think about sort of the landscape of Slack kudos tools, what do you think is your angle? Like, how are you approaching this in a unique way? Or what's your vision for how that'll look?
It's a pretty crowded market for sure. I think where we stand out is the personalization. And we feel that if you just look at pulse survey tools, they're definitely a CEO's tool. They're definitely a VP people function tools, right? Like it's built for the entire organization to go out. And I think the control goes away from the manager. So we feel that we want to continue doubling down on what the early users have said they love, which is the personalization for them and their team mapped to their business problems. So if their business problem is, let's say, goal alignment, the check-ins are based around that.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. So go as through adoption through the manager, and that's the core customer.
Yeah.
Got it.
We want to focus on that persona for sure. And if things go well, maybe in 5 years, we might be doing other parts of the funnel, maybe onboarding, maybe exit interviews.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think, and I do think that manager persona is often sort of underserved, despite that these products are about management. So that makes a lot of sense to me. Can you share a little bit about where you're going in the short term? Like, is it mostly about fleshing out the check-in and making this more customizable? Is it about pulling some other parts in? Is it about the feedback? Like, where does this go? How does this evolve in the short term?
Good question. I think we're pretty early. We just switched on the closed beta like 2 weeks ago. So we're still getting a few early signals. What we do know is for the next 2 to 3 months, we will stay inside Slack and we will make our check-ins more powerful. So the frequency of check-ins can be customized. We, as of now, do not have icebreaker check-ins. So, just social questions around people getting to know each other better. So we want to, for the next 2 months, definitely just focus on that and then expand to, we have a lot of interest coming in for WhatsApp groups, especially in Asia. A lot of work happens just inside WhatsApp. So can these check-ins go inside WhatsApp? GitHub projects for engineering teams managing their entire work in GitHub issues. Can we fit into that and sync there? So that's the plan.
Yeah, I think one of the most important sort of nuts to crack on this problem is like the retention problem. I think people often will start with this and it's like they started a great workout plan and they go to the gym and they keep at it and then they get a little lazy, they miss a check-in. And then, months later, they've they're barely doing it. I think it's a solvable problem, but I'm curious if and how you're thinking about how you'll keep people engaged 3, 6, 12 months, into using this.
Good question. We don't have the answers for it yet.
I think to the degree that you can think about the retention of your cohorts as you go into it, I think that can be like a really great North Star, because there's no doubt that people want to start using these sorts of products, but to the extent that you can try to hold people in there for a long time, if you can crack that, I think this is a huge opportunity.
Awesome. Can I reach out to you later on maybe some tips on how Lattice solved for this?
Of course, absolutely. Yeah, jack@lattice.com. I would love to talk about it. I'm getting the note that there's only a few seconds left. I did just want to say that I think also if you can connect the feedback and the goals, if you can make that system a single system, and if you can make, I think what you've got right now is very geared at small teams, which is great. That's a great way to start because that can one day become small teams inside of a big company. And so having the small team and the managers you're basing it makes a lot of sense. So just to the extent that you can connect all of these things and have a cohesive unit, I think you could build something powerful. Awesome. And it sounds like that's how you're thinking.
Got it.
But yeah, I love the direction you're going. I love the focus on managers. I think that's really smart.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Right, thanks.
Awesome. Thank you so much, team. Kaapi and Jack, thank you very much for joining us and stopping by. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Our next host is Rahul Vohra. Rahul Vohra is the CEO and founder of Superhuman. He will first be chatting with Omar Kamali, who is, hello. Hey, Rahul, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Great. One second here. Your first pioneer today is Omar Kamali from Germany, and he'll be presenting Monitoro. Before we get into that, just really briefly want to remind anybody who's watching through Twitter that you can still register for this event. All right, Omar, go ahead.
Okay, thanks, Jackson. All right, let me share my screen. Cool. Hello, Rahul. Hello, everyone. So I'm Omar. I'm from Berlin, and I'm the founder of Monitoro, a no-code web scraping tool everyone can use. So data is the fuel of the future, right? Like businesses and decision makers rely on it, but it's locked in third-party websites. So they either copy-paste it, or they create costly and complex scraping infrastructure. Our solution for this, Monitoro, allows you to select which data to extract from any website. Now, every time something changes, we send this data to your other services in a machine-readable format. Let's look at a demo. I'm going to track the Twitter followers of the Pioneer account and send them to Google Sheets. Now I'm extracting the data. And now I connect it to my sheet. And I'm done. And wait for it. There we go. So that was easy, right? So currently our users are using Monitoro to track all sorts of websites for changes. We have recruitment agencies, wholesale traders, software development teams, as well as NGOs, including actually an NGO from Washington, DC, who are using Monitoro currently to extract data because everybody needs this information, right? We are exploring 3 different go-to-market strategies right now. Our B2C offering is live on our website. Our B2B offering is being designed with customers and other partners who wants to create data products on top of our infrastructure. And we have an enterprise tier for larger scale data extraction needs. So what's next for us? We want to build this platform for others to create data intensive products and businesses. We are aiming to raise $1.5 million to do exactly this. So write me at my email, omar@monitoro.xyz, and feel free to watch the video anytime at this link. Thank you.
Very cool. Okay, so
Thanks.
Sorry for that sound. I love these kinds of businesses. I've seen quite a few live and intelligent scraping businesses over the years. They often end up being fantastically profitable businesses, actually, but they seem to cap out at a certain revenue size. So I'm curious if you are able to articulate what the next steps would be beyond this core product and how you see this growing to $1 billion company.
Yes. Actually, that's a great question. So my background actually is web automation, and I've been doing this for more than 6 years. And I have a very good understanding of all sorts of limitations when you start to productize let's say, automation and this kind of patterns to different use cases and so on. So our approach for this is that scraping right now is just the technical implementation of this iteration of the platform. It's just our V1, basically. What we want in the future, and this is what we are raising for, is to build a data platform. So basically a pipeline from producers to consumers in a way that makes everybody benefit from it. There are many websites who would be happy to leverage the information they have in a way that is both friendly to their infrastructure and that is, let's say, convenient to the developers who want to consume that data and also financially viable. So we want to come up with a business model and the infrastructure to manage data pipelines at web scale.
I see. Okay. And so trying to connect it to the question I asked, which is, let's say, how do you get to $100 million of revenue? Is the answer that you see a marketplace of data that people can come along and just essentially subscribe to the data? Is that the idea?
Yes, this is one of the potential models we are seeing. So one other potential model is that we allow other people to create more specific products. So we provide them with the infrastructure, and then they go and create a business, let's say a community for a specific type of video games, for example, or specific types of music, etc. And they are finding the right business model with the right data sources and so on. And we want to facilitate that.
Got it. Okay, cool. So next question would be, can you share, for example, the top 4 or 5 use cases that you're seeing? You mentioned recruitment agencies, software agencies. What specifically are they doing?
Yeah, so the recruitment agencies, some of them are tracking LinkedIn profiles for skill changes. So whenever a new candidate changes a skill, they want to be aware of it. So we send them an email, in this case, writing them that, you know, this candidate, et cetera, and they evaluate them and they update their internal software. Another use case that we have is with an NGO in Washington, the Tech Policy Institute, who are tracking several government websites to feed their dashboard. So they have a dashboard for economic impact of the current pandemic. And they are using this as a way to stay aware of all the changes. Like they are tracking the TSA website for changes in the flight traffic. They are tracking the government, the US Treasury for changes in the bond yields, etc. So like this is yet another use case we are looking at. We also have customers who are tracking product prices at a very large scale to perform, let's say, arbitrage in between different markets.
Excellent. Okay, so that was going to be segueing nicely into my next question, which is how do you make the data actionable? It sounds like for the NGO, there's a dashboard. Did they construct that dashboard or did you construct the dashboard?
Yeah, so the way we make it actionable is by connecting the source of the data directly to the service where they want to consume it from. In the case of this NGO, what they are doing is to read updates in their Slack channels. So they have dedicated Slack channels and new updates are received there. In the case of other customers, they are updating directly their Google Sheets. So we are providing them with an easy way, as you could see in the demo, to update specific sheets. And actually, we are updating thousands of products in one of our sheets. So yeah, like this is basically how we connect them directly without needing for a middleman or for programming.
And the company that you're emailing the LinkedIn skill changes to, was that set up with something like Zapier, or do you actually send the emails as part of the product experience?
Correct. So it was set up with Zapier. We are evaluating email changes, like sending changes via email, but it's actually quite, let's say, a diverse set of use cases. Not everybody wants emails in the same way at the same frequency, and that might, let's say, distract us too much from our main goal right now. This is why we do it via IFTT, Zapier, and others. And
what's the business model today?
The business model today is that customers are paying per page that is monitored. So for every web page, they are paying depending on the frequency and depending on how many pages they want to prepay for.
Got it. Okay, awesome. Well, I'm getting a note on timing, so I think we're done. Thank you very much. It looks like a really, really cool business. And like I said, all of the ones of these I've come across are at least successful at the medium scale, and it seems like you have a shot to build a really big company as well.
Thank you, Rahul. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Omar. Next up,
Thank
we
you,
have
Jackson.
Shun Yamada. Shun will be presenting from San Francisco. He is from Japan, and he will be showing us Remotehour.
Oh, sorry. Hey, thank you, Jackson. Okay, our presentation. Can you see that? Okay. Hi, I'm Shun Yamada, CEO and founder of the Remotehour. We're building an app that allows your clients and customers to talk to you anytime you're available while working. So let's get started. We are not a virtual office for teams like Tandem. It's a one-to-many relationships like a freelancer and client, a professor and a student, or an investor and founders. It's difficult to schedule a call in these circumstances while working remotely. It's not a call up, but rather fully remote office hours. The guest with just one click can talk to the host anytime they're available. The host signs up and shares their virtual room URL with the guest. Also, the host can easily customize their availability status. If you are a lawyer or consultant, you can earn money through a call, set a fee, and the guest will pay to talk to you. For example, I'm willing to pay $100 for one session to talk to the CEO of the Superhuman, actually. It's a demo. Just a single click connection that talk to the host. It's a simple and easy and seamless way of the calling. Currently we charge a 5% commission when the users get paid through a call. However, we'll try to build a premium plan that allows them to increase rooms and charge zero commission. We currently have 40 main active users, but they have been using Remotehour for more than a month. We're not an app for scheduled meetings. Don't use it for this purpose. Someone may come into your virtual room even though you have booked a meeting with another person. However, our app will definitely help you if you want to receive calls anytime you're available, and it's a much better solution than any other call apps currently on the market. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, super fascinating. First question,
yes.
let's talk about I think the core assumption here, which I think is fascinating, which is always on is the future of calling. Why do you believe that?
Yeah, actually good question. So actually that's in remote working, it's really hard to schedule the call actually. So sometimes if we are in the same office, we can talk to the next to the people, and it's really easy to talk to. Hey, what do you think about this design, and what's up about this issue? What do you think about? It's really easy to talk to the people, and if you were in the office, but it's remote. In remote, it's really hard to the schedule. It's really just in chat. Chat is not enough because chat is not real time. So I think we can, if we have a business hours, we can it always on the really makes us more seamless to talk to each other. Yeah. So yeah, I believe for the remote working is having. So that is my reason to always on be the huge of the calling. Yeah.
So I 100% believe in remote, of course.
Yeah.
But this notion of always on, and let me just make sure I understand it. So the idea is that I might sit with this thing open, which would allow people to contact me, presumably in a time range that I specify, and that's the time range when I'm always on. Is that correct?
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So this is, I guess it's like taking the concept of office hours. You know, a lot of CEOs I know, when they get too busy, they switch from doing one-on-ones every week to just doing office hours. It's kind of like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah.
You see this primarily internal to companies, or for people talking to folks who are in other organizations?
That's an interesting question. Actually, so we are, but actually, so it's not internal, it's for another stream. Actually, so actually this is a use case for some of the, I have been a freelancer and I have several clients. I actually just shared some of my URL and the other each teams actually I share the URL. And actually so my current users are something as teachers or some of the doctor or some of the investor or something. So they guys have some of the child, it's programming language is kind of a child component of some things they have. So it's kind of the one-to-many relationship. So we our use case is so.
Got it. Okay, so I think there is something really interesting here. My advice would be repackaging it. Because right now you're sort of coming out of the gate and saying, hey, we're not tandem, we're not this, we're not about scheduling calls. But maybe there's a way of identifying a problem that it sounds like your core target market has. So let's say they're freelancers and so forth, which is it's becoming increasingly hard to get utilization out of their time and to make money, especially in this time when they need that more than anything else. And what we have here is a way to more efficiently fill their time. And so there's sort of a direct pitch to them, which is, hey, listen, you'll make more money. You don't have to learn anything. You're just selling the knowledge that you already have to the clients you already have. It's just making it easier for them to get in touch with you and to buy your time. So that would be a piece of advice, is just sort of repackage it. The other thing that occurred to me is this seems very similar to a company that I've been following for some time, one of Dan Martell's companies, Clarity.fm. How do you see yourself as different to Clarity?
Yeah, actually, this is a really good, interesting question. So Clarity.fm is just, it's neither booking, actually. So actually, I have used the Clarity.fm as something advisor I wanted to check. And so actually, I have to schedule the meeting and some of the, we have some of the friction to talk to some of the steps. But actually, so in Remotehour, if user opens the URL, and just you can get a call anytime you're available. Actually, this is just when you're online, you can get a calls and you can get money. Really easy to get it. So.
Got it. So it's like Clarity, but always on and with zero friction.
Yes, sure. Yeah.
Oh, excellent. Well, thank you for sharing. It looks really exciting.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you, Shun.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Tshepo Mohlala, who is from South Africa and San Francisco, and he'll be presenting Metacode. We are at the halfway point right now. I want to remind everybody that there is some exciting features coming up in addition to our 5 pioneers left. If you have not started casting your votes, I would encourage you to do that, as well as chatting with any pioneers you want to follow up with, and literally following up with any you want to follow up with via the button below. Go ahead, Tshepo.
My name's Tshepo, and I'm founder and CEO of Metacode. Let me just go into full screen mode. I'm founder and CEO of Metacode, and we're doing enterprise code search. So the problem we've identified is that navigating large code bases is really difficult. In fact, the best technology we have for it is like decades old plain text, slow keyword search. And a good sort of analogy to the situation that we're in terms of code search is like pre-Google internet search. So it's not great. So our solution is fast, intuitive, just much better code search. And there's sort of like a few dimensions in which we sort of improve code search. The first is just make it super fast, right? So if you're searching over large code bases, multi-gigabyte code base, it can be super slow. So we solve that problem. Number 2 is that we also introduced this new paradigm for searching, which is natural language search. So intuitive code search, so that you're able to basically make intuitive queries when you're searching your code. And without further ado, I'll jump into a demo to show you what that looks like. Awesome. All right, so we're in Metacode right now. And this is the kind of par for the course normal regular expression search, but you'll find that it actually works a lot faster in Metacode. So for example, let's say we wanted to find some import statements across these things, across these files. And I might make a regex query like this, and whatever, it resolves in almost 100 milliseconds per query per keystroke. But let's say we were looking for something in JavaScript files, TypeScript files. You can narrow it down. You can, no matter how pathological not no matter how pathological your regex query gets, but you can make some pretty pathological queries and get super fast search. Another modality is semantic code search, which is natural language code search. And let's say you wanted to say, I don't know, delete file. So if you look at the sort of results here, you'll see obviously delete file and stuff like that. But you also see the semantic sort of similarities. So you'll find, for example, saved files, delete file, stuff like that. So remove file. So even if that keyword doesn't exist in that exact query, we can still resolve it. All right, so going back into the presentation. Yeah, this is, as I said, made for the enterprise. So we have on-prem, cloud, and IDE solutions. Our cloud solution is almost out. You can expect that soon. It's super fast, as we said. Quick setup, under 5-minute setup, super simple. And yeah, Metacode is intelligent enterprise code search, and you can check it out at metacode.app, and there's my email. Thanks.
Great, Tshepo, thank you for sharing and for the demo. Okay, so as the founder of Superhuman, I obviously believe in 100 milliseconds search. No need to convince me of that. Something that I'm less convinced about, though, is this idea of natural language search. I'm curious why you decided that this is a problem and that people want to search this way, especially developers.
Yeah, so the canonical example I give is, say you're a new developer to a large company. How do you get onboarded really fast? Typically, there's really no good way to do that. It's either you're talking to a bunch of engineers and then giving you a tour of the code base, or you're taking that upon yourself and sort of learning the code base on your own that way. Natural language search sort of solves that problem from the jump. So it allows you to be able to make the kinds of queries you might make into Google if you were searching Google for something, but over code, right? So you wouldn't know the exact keywords, for example, that pertain to whatever part of the code base that you wanted to make edits to or traverse. And that's what natural language search gives you, the ability to traverse code you're otherwise unfamiliar with. Yeah.
So I think that makes sense, but it sounds like there's an assumption being made, which is the way that people search Google is via natural language search, which I'm not sure is actually the case. But I haven't answered it myself, but just pointing out there is that assumption. Is it
fair enough.
This from the text editors that people are already using?
Yeah, so we have an IDE solution, but it turns out that once you're using this in an IDE environment, the size of the code base you're searching over actually isn't that large. And so most of your queries tend to be kind of targeted queries. So when I look at the analytics logs for the kind of searches people make when they're using the IDE extension, they make super precise queries that are really targeted to, I want to teleport to this part of the code that I already know anyway. But in a much larger code base environment, you'll see more explorative queries. So yeah, so we do have solution, but it's just not quite as useful in a local machine IDE environment.
Interesting. Okay, so you think that the primary way that this will be used isn't necessarily from the IDE, but it's in a much larger technology organization. Developer maybe wants to search hundreds of repositories at once.
That's right.
Okay, interesting. This sounds quite a lot like the environment that we had back at LinkedIn, which is exactly like you were describing, many hundreds of code repositories and tens of millions of lines of code, if not more. Is there a technology moat here that you think is real, or
So the technology. So the technology is kind of rather straightforward. So whenever I talk about it, I'm sort of so we're using basically this thing called Word2Vec. It basically learns basically the vectorization of all the keywords you use in your code base, and then allows you to basically match those keywords against whatever your query was, right? So it basically allows you that semantic search to happen. But I don't think that's quite a moat. What we think is the moat is the data. So the main reason Google is really great at search isn't really because our algorithm is super great at finding the most relevant part of the internet that you search for just based on your query. It's also based on what people are clicking, right? It's based on PageRank. And so we think that the actual moat here is basically the data that we get from companies, people using this at companies, selecting whichever code that was their correct results, and actually providing much better ranking in comparison to what anybody else would do. So as we build up, as people use Metacode more often in some company, we just get way better at relevance, and I think that's a key moat, I think.
I think it's worth pointing out that the Google strategy was at the very least two-step. In the beginning, data wasn't leveraged, it was PageRank, and PageRank was significantly better than everything that came prior, so that they could then collect the data to do the next step. in order
yeah, fair enough.
to collect the data, the initial thing has to be 10 times better than what
yeah.
And 100 millisecond search across all your repositories might be that. Natural language search might be that. But if I were you, I would just get sort of 100% confident that the thing you're building in the absence of data to increase health is still
so there's a bunch of tricks we do, and the long story short is that we actually look at how often, for example, a function is called throughout the code base, and we'll rank those results much higher if that happens to be one of the candidate results. So there's stuff like that.
Okay, that makes sense. And then lastly, what's the business model?
Yeah, so the business model is straightforward. So most enterprise products like this will say something like, we'll charge per engineer per month, and that's how we want to charge, $25 per engineer per month. Right now, we have a few customers, none enterprise though. Most of our customers are actually just using the IDE version. Anyway, the purpose of this pitch is actually to just get more enterprise interest. So that's where we're at.
Excellent. Well, I'm sure you will. I can speak from personal experience of having worked in an extremely large code-based environment. I know that this would be useful. I think it's one of those interesting companies that is, as you say, primarily useful for enterprises.
Yeah.
Most SMBs and startups, the entire code base fits on every individual developer's machine.
Yep.
And so I think my final piece of advice there would be, companies have such a thing as DNA. They end up growing up to be good at the things that the original founding team is good at. And so if this truly is an enterprise company, I'd start getting people on the team who know that world super well.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, will do. Awesome.
Awesome.
Sweet.
Awesome. Thank you, Tshepo. And thank you so much, Rahul, for coming down and stepping in. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
A lot of fun. All right. Next host will be joining us is John Kim from Sendbird. And how are you, John? How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Great. Thanks so much for being here.
Excited to be here.
Cool. Yeah. All right. Our next, your pioneer. Yep. There he is. Jay-Z. Jay-Z is presenting from San Francisco, and he'll be showing us Matrix.
Let's do this.
Cool. Hey, everyone. Hey, John. Hi, I'm Jay-Z from San Francisco, and we're building Matrix, a democratized esports brand. So esports is an extremely quickly growing market, but it has a large problem. Fan spend is much lower than in other sports. The reason for this is a lack of engagement. Traditional sports get the benefit of having in-person tribalism. We deeply connect with the sport teams that we live near. However, esports doesn't get this because the teams are remote. So we replace location-based tribalism with ownership-based tribalism. Matrix is an esports brand where our fans can purchase a share that allows them to receive dividends and vote on various decisions. In other words, they're literally owning the brand. This makes people more engaged. You're experiencing this right now with the voting under this live stream. Without the voting mechanism, you're just listening to me talk, which is way less engaging. So here are some examples of things they can vote on. We've been letting people vote on tournament rules and new teams. Eventually, we'll be hosting this with crypto tools, but right now we're just prototyping with Typeform. So we see Matrix as a combination of three consumer trends. One is ownership and trading, seen through platforms like Robinhood. Another is content and lifestyle-focused esport brands like 100 Thieves. And then we finally see it through Supreme, which is commoditized culture and allows people to purchase pieces of culture and trade it. So the combination of these three trends creates Matrix. We've had really good traction so far. We've seen an 11x spectator increase in tournaments and a 19x participant increase through voting. We also have over 200% month-over-month growth, and our content creators reach over 100,000 people. Matrix isn't just an esports brand. We're bringing in a new area of consumption. Consumers no longer want to passively consume the entertainment. Legacy media is dead, right? No one uses QB. Netflix says that Fortnite is a bigger competitor than HBO. People want to be an active participant and creator in their own entertainment. We can see this through something like TikTok taking over the world. There's a postmodernist idea known as the culture industry, which says that our culture is being mass manufactured to support homogeneity and appeal to the lowest common denominator. However, the culture industry is dying. We're tired of corporations creating what they think we want. Ironically, we want to break out of the matrix that they've created for us. So at our Matrix, we allow you to do that by owning your own entertainment. We're currently raising $1 to $1.5 million in seed money to scale up, If you're interested in joining the rant or just want to learn more, hit the follow button and enter the matrix with us.
Great. A couple of questions. So, how are the fans finding you guys today? You mentioned that you guys are growing 20% a month over
Yeah.
phenomenal. And what is their first kind of like aha moment? Like, this is it. Like, I want to do this more.
Yeah, so the main way they're finding us right now is either through the teams we run. So they'll be watching the games we play in, so Call of Duty Mobile or PUBG Mobile, or through the tournaments that we host, which they want to play in. And then the moment that makes them want to join is for the tournaments, they like being able to choose the rules because then they can experience the game how they want to play it. And it's more fair that way. And for the teams, they like the ability to have ownership and feel that they're like really part of this.
So the just so that I make sure that I understood you guys correctly. So these are the fans coming in, check out your website, or and then actually choose to buy a piece of the team metrics, or are they buying a piece of the player themselves?
They'll be buying a piece of the team itself, so the entire brand.
I see. And then how do you then keep the players retained within the team?
Yeah, so one of the ways is just traditional sports mechanism, like have a good working environment and everything. One thing we found that was useful in recruiting teams is that, players really like the aspect of this being community owned because they see that as being more ethical and more open than how teams are traditionally run.
I see. And tell me a little bit about the how do you plan to build this into a sustainable and enduring business? And just to provide a little bit of context, I was the first professional gamer that was backed by Samsung long back in the days. I was Korea's #1 Unreal Tournament player. So I've kind of been exposed from the player side a little bit. So how do you, and a lot of the esports teams have struggled finding that kind of the, I don't say product market fit, but more like financial sustainability. So like, help me understand a little bit about the business model from the each, I guess, stakeholders.
Yeah, so like our entire plan is built around how do we make more money from our fans? And what we see as the solution is this ownership mechanism. So traditional esports teams don't make money because the fans aren't engaged with them. They're not loyal. They're watching for specific players or for the game. They're not watching because they like the team. So with ownership, they now like the team and they're connected with the team. And they're way more likely to purchase our merchandise or look at our sponsorship material, which raises our sponsor value a lot. And then we also plan to take a transaction fee every time they vote as an additional stream of income from there.
So you mentioned a couple of things, whether it be merchandise or sponsorship, things like that. Like, where do you see most of your revenue coming from? Is that merchandise? Or?
Yeah, that's a good question. Initially, we think it's going to be like traditional sports where it's all going to come from sponsorship and merchandise. But at some point, we think with a large enough fan base, that's going to start shifting over to transaction fees and different actions they take and getting money from there.
Got it. And currently you guys are, let's say, a single fund / team. Do you envision going this to multi-team, multi-platform on your platform?
Yeah, 100%. Like the plan is to pick up more teams once we raise seed fund. We have plans and we're in talks to pick up a few more teams, more content creators. And then in a few years, the overarching plan is to start moving into different verticals like the music industry. And we can continue using this voting mechanism, crowd governance system there.
Got it. Makes sense. I guess one kind of final question. So you mentioned like players, or this whole philosophy is around democratization. So I'm assuming the players are kind of spread out. They're not necessarily co-located in a single location. So is it correct to assume that these players will be all over the world joining all different kinds of teams?
Yeah, like we currently run a team in Vietnam and then we run a team in North America. So we're really looking at being fully remote. The teams itself will be grouped in one place because they have to live together for the internet and everything. But yeah, as far as where we choose, it's global.
Great. I have roses and thorns. Roses something positive. I do admire the growth rate. I like this model because as a former player myself, I see myself being engaged much better in this way rather than being part of one corporate team where I have are more treated as a resource. So that's definitely more positive. And I do think this is the future. Kind of the thorn side of things is I would definitely focus on the double down on the model with how do you keep the players retained, how do you keep them motivated, how do you actually get them more value from engaging with your platform. rather than
Right.
some other flashy brand they might do. So because it's like it's a fan based platform, so you should absolutely get the best players out there to work with your platform instead of being part of some other big brands. So that'd be my only kind of thorn/risk there. But this is exciting.
Cool. Thank you.
Cool. Best of luck, guys.
Awesome. Thanks, Jay-Z. Next up, we have Preston Attebery, who will be streaming from New York and presenting his project BlockCities.
How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Doing well. All right. All right. Hi, my name is Preston Attebery, and me and my co-founder Leonidas are building BlockCities. BlockCities is a digital space for you and your Twitter friends. Just sign in with Twitter and choose one of these amazingly adorable characters. Then you can find friends to instant message and voice talk. You never have to set up a time or call, just visit a city to see who's around. If you want to chat, type a message and it appears above your head, but only for a few seconds. If you want to talk, walk nearby and your voice will be heard. Walk away and your voice fades. This makes talking online real time and ephemeral. So when your friends are in BlockCities with you, they're really there with you. House Party changed the game with their no-call system. No need to set up a time. Just hop in the app and instantly talk with your friends. At BlockCities, we want to take that a step further. Not only can you instantly hang out with friends by visiting a city, but you can actually do activities together, like exploring, building, or just kicking a ball around. Just visit a city, find your friends, and you can do activities together. And each city is web-based, so you just click the link. There's no special hardware or software that's needed to join the fun. So far, we built city building. This is how users can create a city to host their friends, and they can customize it with different trees, waterways, and buildings. Already, users have created some incredible cities, and you can see some collectible buildings here. Users have built and collected over 3,000 buildings, bringing us more than $25,000 in revenue, and we're raising $250,000 to fuel our future growth. And this gets us really excited about the future of BlockCities. We want to bring even more fun to user cities. Things like customizable characters, collectible sneakers, the ability to run, jump, and fly, jetpacks, anything that would be fun to do with your friends in these digital cities, we want to bring to BlockCities. And that's BlockCities. If you want to join the beta, you can do so at blockcities.build, and you can join the waitlist there. All right, thank you.
Cool. So many questions.
Sure.
My previous startup was a social gaming company. We were one of those guys who spam you on Facebook, invite friends to kill other friends and pay us money. That kind of worked out well.
Yeah.
And I saw what you guys did with the mask there with the character. That's
Yep.
So,
sign of the times.
Yeah. For me to understand this clearly, so that it's like a concept, like to your point, like House Party / Clubhouse plus Animal Crossing, the city version.
Mm-hmm.
Is it the right way to mental model this?
I think so. Yeah.
And you mentioned like 25K in revenue. Over what time period is this?
So that was our first year of selling.
And when did you guys launch?
We launched in April of last year.
Cool.
And that was primarily selling buildings. So I will say our revenue is going to shift more towards in-game wearables and other things.
Mm-hmm.
But that is our initial revenue from selling collectible buildings.
I see. So who are your users? Their personas, demographic, who are these people?
I mean, so the tagline is Twitter friends. I think it's internet people. It's Twitter obsessed people. It's people who love being online, who love having this kind of digital life, who have friends that, may be across continents, countries, and people who are tweeting. So I think this is a way that on Twitter, you can get into some kind of conversation. On BlockCities, you can actually hang out like you are in person, but in this digital space.
Got it. Who do you think you're actually competing against?
That's tough. I think on one end, we are competing against things like Zoom, House Party, audio direct communication apps. I think on another end, we're competing with maybe more casual entertainment or ways to talk like Twitter. I think that we will pull from both. And I think that maybe some people will maybe play less Fortnite and be in here. Some people will spend less time on Twitter and be in here. It's hard to sum up, but that's what I would guess.
And one challenge with these kind of casual / gaming like experiences that there's a lack of, or people get the fatigue / the novelty wears off within probably the first 12 to 18 months. That's why most of this casual gaming life cycle is fairly short. So how do you envision kind of keeping that momentum going, keeping this content fresh? What is your strategy there? Content strategy, I guess.
Yeah, I think the way to keep it fresh is definitely to design really nice in-game wearables that are always updating, new events that are constantly happening. I think what keeps this fresh is just the relationships and the people that end up in your city. And so I think if we get that ball rolling, then like your friends are going to be here. Basically, your friends end up on your city, you get a notification, you jump in. So you're not necessarily playing this as a casual game for maybe solo entertainment, but you're constantly going because your friends are there. So I think if we figure that out, which is definitely a question mark, then I don't think we have to worry too much about the in-game items not being exciting enough or the gameplay not being in depth enough, because it's about the friendships that happen in there.
Got it. Yeah, seems like we're almost at time. I do have ton of follow-up questions. This is an area that I'm personally passionate about. But a couple of feedback, I'm sure you've thought about this too, is
sure.
Really focus on the retention mechanism. You mentioned notifications a little bit, but retention mechanism, how to pull people back into and building a habit is super critical with especially in the casual gaming experience. So retention mechanism / notification. And second is viral loops. Like how do you get people to actively invite other people so that you're lowering the cost of acquisition, CAC, basically the CAC cost is going to be super critical because it's incredibly hard for people to come find you unless you have the viral mechanism almost like built in as part of the experience. So that's one thing. So again, roses of thorns are good things. This is kind of a new trend where Animal Crossing is kind of working out really well with the COVID. This Clubhouse house party is definitely a theme. So I do think this is a very interesting opportunity. And people love building stuff. It's then how do you get people to brag that on social media? Just look at, check out my cool city, let's hang out. So you need to get those viral loops / bragging mechanisms in there. I do worry about the custom. I guess you definitely should talk to your customers a lot more. You mentioned Twitter, but Twitter is a cluster of different personas. There could be venture capitalists, startup founders, but also a bunch of whether it be teenagers or whatnot. So you really want to understand who your customers are, why they're playing, what are they, making trade-offs. You mentioned like Zoom, a house party, but like casual gaming, you will definitely have certain cluster of users who comes back to your platform. So you want to really double down on that. And what are they making trade-offs? Are they comparing you guys against Animal Crossing or Zoom, like what your main competition is, and really understand and build your features around that core persona, and the viral mechanism and the retention mechanism should all revolve around that customer persona would be my suggestion. But
okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's helpful.
Cool. Best of luck, guys.
All right, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Preston. Next up, we have, John, your final pioneers today are Kinana, Reema, and Muath, who are presenting from Palestine, and they will be showing you DyNotify. I want to remind everybody in the audience that we do have 2 pioneers left now before the retro pitch with Kevin Hartz. So definitely stay tuned for that, and as well make sure that you're contributing your votes and chatting with any pioneers that you're interested in, and following anyone you'd like to talk with later. Take it away, DyNotify team.
Thank you, Jackson.
Thank you. Yes.
Hi, John.
Hi, John.
Hello.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I am Kinana, and I'm here with my teammates, Muath and Reema, and we are the DyNotify team. Let's start with the problem. Search process can be hard, time-consuming, and overwhelming. This is because of the large number of sites that are out there. You may need to open dozens of tabs on your browser or install a bunch of mobile apps on your phone, and then go through hundreds of irrelevant research results just to find the best deal. And even if you find a good option, prices and availability change a lot, and it's difficult to keep tracking them.
As a result, people need a service that simplifies the process of online shopping. DyNotify is the solution. It's a browser extension like Honey, but for alternatives instead of coupons. Show a design demo that we have created. For a specific product, integrated buttons appear on each page. For example, this button indicates that there is a cheaper option elsewhere and you can save $30 from local or global websites. An additional button, you can show price history to check if the price is real or not. Sorry, here. And finally, an add to watch list button that you can add this product and get alerts on price changes and availability. In addition to the browser extension, we also created a web application where you can search in all e-commerce sites at once with specific search and get recommendations and top deals from across all sites based on your interest.
Our go-to-market strategy is to drive traffic from SEO on social media while focusing on e-commerce and getting revenue from affiliates and subscriptions. Our future roadmap includes tracking flights, hotels, games, also recommendations for movies and videos, business tools for sellers, and APIs for developers. We're seeking $160,000 investment. It covers all costs for 1 year, including our salaries, 1 employee, and marketing and tech expenses, to reach $80,000 per month in revenue, based on 6,000 monthly active users. Thank you.
Cool. Couple questions. By the way, I love your landing page. It's probably one of the definitely a better version of the landing pages. I actually thought that was like
thank you so much.
Live.
Thank you.
But I did try to click on a couple of buttons and it wasn't those buttons. I recognized it was a single page. But anyway, a couple of questions. Like, how do you deal with the messy data, structural changes to website that you're trying to like monitor and crawl from, and then how do you actually? Some of these platforms will eventually find out, okay, these guys are, piggybacking off our platform. And then they decide to go after you guys and block you guys from further getting your data. There's a loaded question, but first, like messy data, structural changes to the website. How do you guys are dealing with that today with 100+ websites you're tracking?
Yeah, excellent question. First, we're using APIs where available. If APIs are not available, we're scrapping their websites according to their terms of service. We've constantly checking for different layouts through our model and our code, and we see if there are any changes in the structure of the page. We'll get a notification. I will change ASAP as soon as possible. So yeah, that's it.
Cool. And you mentioned terms of services, and I know some of these platforms, like whether it be Amazon or whatnot, will have some guidelines around that, whether it be API rate limits or things like that. So how do you potentially will envision yourself working with these platforms that's gonna try to continue to like block you guys from accessing those data?
So we are using third-party services for scrapping APIs, so CAPTCHAs and other anti-scrapping methods. So we are trying to override them while complying with the terms of service. It's like Google also scraps everything. So yeah, scrapping is a gray area here. But first, we are using APIs, but APIs get limited. They have issues. APIs are not available across all sites. So we are trying to using other services and getting new methods of how can we retrieve data for better. Yeah.
Great. And are you guys actually live? Are people using you guys or?
Not yet, actually. We expect that in like 3 to 4 months, maybe we'll start the beta version stage, but currently we're still developing.
And you mentioned 3 to 4 months. What's stopping you from releasing it next month? What are the bottlenecks there?
So our extension, like we showed in the presentation, have a lot of features. So we are developing a browser extension and a web application. The browser extension shows alternatives for products. It can track price history, it can track availability, it can show price history. Even the alternatives, it can show exact alternatives or similar alternatives. Tracking also gives you for prices smart or custom. There are a lot of things that we need to integrate and test better, and test our models in the back end to see if everything working fine before releasing it. Also applies for the web application. The web application needs to be integrated well with a browser extension, so it needs a bit of work and testing before it's come out.
Okay, great. Look on the business model / vision side of things. So a lot of these kind of aggregator business, to I guess Rahul's point in the earlier some of the pitches, sometimes they figure out a model where they can actually gather enough audience, build enough of a revenue stream, but they don't really become big in the end. So like, how do you envision starting with this aggregator model, and then see yourselves guys becoming like the billion-dollar company moving forward?
So our mainly, like we mentioned, Honey is for coupons at the checkout page. Our extension is for alternatives at the product page. So here's the similarity. Our main business model is to get affiliates from people. So when browsing a product on Amazon, we redirect them to eBay, to another website, and get a commission based on that. And we're also figuring out other options for the search aggregator to get subscriptions for business sellers, for developers who need APIs or something like that, to further expand our company or our services. But mainly our business model will be from affiliates.
I see. Seems like we're running out of time. So a couple of roses and thorns here. So what I like is that you guys definitely seem to focus on the quality of the product, just by judging your slides and your website landing pages. I do think these kind of things definitely require a lot of the focus on the user experience side of things. And this is a real problem. I see this all the time, including myself during coronavirus. I'm trying to get certain cameras. It's always out of stock. So I am part of that target user base who are experiencing this. A couple of thoughts there is, I think it's really important for you guys to get to a launch as quickly as possible. Cut down the features to absolute essentials. Figure out if you can limit instead of 100 websites, figure out what are the top 10 websites or top 5 websites you want to go after, and really learn from the iteration, because ultimately a lot of your assumption will break the moment your product actually hits the market. So you want to figure out what's the primary constraints from you to getting to launch, and then from the launch to the further growth and validation of your product market fit. You want to figure out the minimal viable product there. So instead of focusing on 3 or 4 months, how do you get to the launch faster and sooner? You should absolutely focus on the learning or iteration. It should be your priority. And second is, most of these products, especially aggregators extension, have trouble with the user acquisition. So if possible, figure out if there's a way for you to include some viral loops in there, similar to like Hotmails in the early days. Like if you invite your friends, there's a something you can quickly send out through email, or something that has a natural viral mechanisms in it. Because you mentioned SEO. SEO is good for B2B business, but for customer or end user extensions, SEOs don't really work that well. So I'd focus more on getting your users to get excited and actually them becoming that user acquisition channel. So focus more on those aspects. But overall, this is a really exciting project, and hopefully you guys really take off and I can be a happy user.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Awesome. Thank you, DyNotify. And John, thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
Likewise.
Everyone. All right, our next host today is Kevin Hartz. Kevin Hartz is the chairman and founder of Eventbrite. He will be hosting our last pioneer in our lineup, Thomas Uhlenbreck from Canada, presenting Pulse Industrial. And after Thomas's presentation, we'll also do a retro pitch with Kevin and Daniel. Kevin, how are you?
I'm great. How are you guys?
Fantastic. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you. Excited to be on.
It's great. The zoom in, I like it. All right, Thomas, go ahead, take it away.
Okay, thanks, Jackson. I'll just share my screen here. So, hey, I'm Thomas.
It's not to use PowerPoint.
Sorry?
The first bit of feedback is not to use PowerPoint. It's really 1990s. I'm just kidding, Thomas. That's a mean way to start things off. I'm playing an evil VC though.
Sure. All right, we'll see how this goes. Well, hopefully no issues with PowerPoint specifically. All right, so everyone, I'm Thomas. I'm from Canada, and my project is AI-powered sensor networks to digitize chemical plants. Here's our product. It's a plug-and-play device designed for unprecedented scale, and it works by analyzing sound and vibration behavior of plant equipment. One of the biggest areas of operating a plant is maintenance. It's like maintaining a car the size of a football stadium. And as time goes on without maintenance, safety risk increases and efficiency in the plant decreases. Now, while there's a lot of things to be maintained, the first application we're targeting is steam leaks. Leaks that are invisible to workers. So when steam is lost, boilers have to work harder and burn more fuel to reproduce that steam. And globally, this wastes $53 billion of fuel and 230 million tons of unnecessary CO2 emissions every year. So when you understand that, our product and service is very intuitive. We make these invisible leaks visible as a hardware-enabled SaaS business. So instead of doing a huge trip around the entire site, an operator can just check his phone, and more importantly, he'll be alerted right away. And these fuel savings from early leak detection can save a single plant in the order of $3 million annually. But this does come with its challenges. The first being noise and vibrations from other heavy machinery in the plant. We've solved this by creating an innovative software approach that estimates the spatial patterns of sound. So this actually allows us to filter and separate sound sources based on location. This is a big advantage we have over other competitors trying to enter this market. By the end of last year, we finished the technology. And since then, we've been running paid pilots with already 70 monitors out in the field. And at these select sites we're at, the conversion value is worth over 500,000 ARR. And once we're at full production, we expect very fast growth based on current sales interest. Okay, thank you everyone for listening. And if you're an investor and this is something that interests you, we're currently fundraising our seed round. But otherwise, I'm happy to chat with anyone who's interested in learning more about tech in the industrial sector. Thank you.
Great presentation. Loved the flow of it. Am I doing this right, by the way? I just kind of jump in there and go at it, Daniel?
Okay. Yeah, it's great.
All right. All right. So did I catch your biography and the makeup of the team? Like, was that anywhere in the presentation?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't.
Okay. That might be like the flow of your presentation was perfect, except you kind of left out the most important thing. I prefer to have the about you at the front, because the business isn't about the business. You know, there's some investors that just invest in big markets and emerging industries, but I like to invest in people. And so I'm curious to hear about your background, and that usually you put that up first, and then I'll kind of dig in about your background, why you became a founder, all these sorts of things. And
well,
so that's
just ask him now about his background, Kevin.
Thomas, can you tell me about your background?
Yeah, so my background is environmental and process engineering, which kind of was the first kind of indicator that I wanted to get into this field. But I also have a background in AI and electronics. So if I was to draw a Venn diagram of those three things, Pulse Industrial would fit well in the center of that. And just throughout my university, I've always wanted to incorporate more new technology into the process industry, which I think there's a huge lack thereof.
Are you concerned at all that, given you've had this experience on these, have seen the process industry, which I know very little about, do you think that biases you towards an old way of doing things? Or how do you come in and be very innovative in a fashion that, say the Stripe team, John and Patrick, knew nothing about payments before entering?
Mm-hmm. No, that's a good question. I mean, for one, I'm still very young in my career, so I haven't been fully corrupted by the old ways of doing things. But on that end, I'm very active in just learning about new technology, new electronics that's coming out of AI, and I'm constantly thinking about ways we can integrate that into the process industry. So like one example is, maybe you've seen this in movies and stuff, you have these big industrial sites with these huge control rooms where there's tons of wiring going around everywhere. Everything is very rigid and set like that. And what we're trying to move over to is a more plug and play way of communicating data back to the cloud. So what we do to enable this is we have these routers that come pre-configured to LTE networks. So when we want to get our data set up and start collecting results back from sensors, all the customer needs to do is plug something into the wall, which doesn't require any security risk on their end of interfering with their on-site systems. And as well, it's just way easier and we don't need to get IT involved.
Got it.
So that's one way that sometimes we present these solutions and at first they're a little unsure. They're like, is this going to work? Like, is this something we're allowed to do? And then we actually go ahead and set that up, and it's really refreshing on both our end and their end too.
Great, got it. So a few tangential comments. One, Thomas, is you should always have your camera above your screen because you're kind of looking off to the side and not making eye contact.
I see that, yeah.
So I'm going to go through these apply to everyone. It's like the kind of presentation key points. Always know. I always know also when you go in to present to an investor how much time exactly you have and cater your presentation. So say if you have an hour presentation, you usually want to get through the entire presentation in say 20 minutes and also kind of pause a lot because you really want an investor jumping in and asking questions. If they're not, they're either super excited and they understand it all, or more likely they're kind of like looking at their Apple Watch or like dozing off and you've kind of lost them. So as much as you can drive an investor into an interactive discussion, it's more powerful. And also like you answered that question well, but then, I'd suggest kind of pausing more and, letting like the question trailed off a little bit in a different direction. I know you want to get little nuggets about the business in there and you are, but like I have ADD and so I kind of do actually. And so I, as soon as like the sentence goes on for like more than 2 or 3 minutes, you kind of lose me. And you usually have to talk to investors in very short and concise sentences because they're not as smart as founders. So those are just a few things on like the presentation format. Going to the business, like how much capital did it take you to get to where you are today?
About 150,000.
That's remarkable. Like that's, I think some of the best investors always look at kind of like progress to capital ratio and the fact that you've done this all on 150,000. So you have a $500,000 annual pilot in place. Is that correct?
So we're at the sites we're at, once they convert after the pilots, that value is 500,000.
Got it. And sorry, how many pilots do you have?
We have 7 right now and quite a bit more coming in.
That's phenomenal. Like that alone. So the ideal is like, how do you show with extreme constraints? Like being an entrepreneur is working under extreme constraints, and how does ingenuity and great things come out of that? And so $150,000 in cash, it's like a YC without raising anything after it. You've gotten to 7 pilots, and that's something to really, you might want to show like this much tiny money came in at this date, and this is what you produced out the other side. And I love businesses that are very capital efficient, that really watch every dollar and invest it wise. You're a capital allocator in a sense, and you have to, and you're finding ways to, you're probably going out there installing these networks on your own. You're like hacking and building software on the side, because I would have guessed it would have taken much more capital. And so that's something to, to come across. It's also enticing that you have a model where you go in and install these sensors. When I looked at, your background in what you were doing, I was like, oh God, it's another hardware company, and you install it and walk away. And, but the fact that it's this ongoing monitoring piece is very important to emphasize, and thus, how that cascades over time, that it's very hard to rip and replace. And, why would they ever take this out, is interesting. Some few other non sequitur thoughts is on the TAM, your total addressable market. You show how much money is lost each year towards these inefficiencies, but then how do you narrow it down is like, what do you address and so on. So you can show that, at least have a reference to where you found that data. But then secondly, how if you did a bottoms up analysis, you did a top down, you're like maybe taking some sector reports or so on, I'm guessing, and saying this much is lost. How much time do we have, by the way?
We're at time.
Okay, good. So the other is to do a bottoms up analysis. Daniel's doing this thing where he flashes in and out. He's got this like flashing video. I swear it's not distracting at all. But this is good for a founder to have someone like Daniel popping in and out to intimidate you. I'm kidding.
Okay, Kevin. Okay, let's.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thank
That
you
was
very
really
much.
Great feedback, and I look forward to your
I'm
presentation.
not done yet. So the thing is to do a bottoms up analysis where, like if you have one factory and you're going to get on average of 500,000 to 2 million, how many does that apply to? How big is the market? How can you reach that $1 billion in annual sales over time?
Right. Great.
Do I have to really stop?
Yes, unfortunately you do.
Was it because of something I said?
But I'll tell you what's going to happen now. We were kind of looking forward to this. We heard that you happened to, and thank you so much, Thomas. We heard that you happened to dust off the archives, the original pitch for Eventbrite.
Yes.
And what I was hoping is I could give you feedback similar to what you just did to Thomas as you pitch Eventbrite. Would you be up for that, Kevin?
No, I've got to go now. Yes, I will.
Okay.
This is a setup because I already promised to do this beforehand.
Incorrect. We're completely improvising this on the fly. This is actually the first time I've ever seen you.
Oh, cool.
And just a note to everybody before we get into that.
Should I give you a pitch now?
Do you have slides?
No,
do you come to an investor meeting without slides? I mean, come on.
Well, our business is so like wonderfully compelling that we just don't use decks. So, but no, you're right. Like I would definitely ding me on that one. A nice simple 12 to 15 page slide deck.
Who did Eventbrite raise its seed from?
Well, it was originally like my own money, but then Michael and Sochi Birch and Jeff Clavier. Sequoia did our Series A.
And what was the pitch to them? And tell me a little bit about how you did market analysis. Was it top down or bottoms up?
Okay, this is a very hard one. And it was very painful for me. Well, first, let me tell you about myself. My name is Kevin, and I've been involved in payments companies, a couple prior to Eventbrite. One is I was an advisor and early investor in PayPal and got to see that payments company grow and do phenomenal things. And when you see a big market emerging, in this case, online payments, and you see a platform, just like the iPhone and iOS, just like Windows from, back in yesteryear, it gives an opportunity for developers to build on top of these businesses. And we saw online payments as a great opportunity. And there was a lot of people building for physical goods or selling physical goods, but we saw the opportunity to build and offer these live experiences.
Now, isn't it the case though, young Kevin, that Live Nation actually owns all the rights to all ticketing of anything interesting? How are you guys going to succeed? I mean, I thought they have kind of exclusive rights to both the venues as well as the artists.
Well, that's a great question. One is that, we've primarily bootstrapped our company. We did take some seed funding, but what we found where the market migrated, first thinking that we'll be the newfangled, we'll beat Ticketmaster and Live Nation and take over that big market. But what we found was something more akin, if you think of the market as a pyramid, and at the top of that, you have, who was in that long ago? I can't say like Justin Bieber because he was like 3 years old.
-2 when you were pitching this, yes.
But let's say that hypothetically there was a Justin Bieber or an NFL team.
Yes.
Or otherwise, they were these giants at the top of this pyramid. So you had, very few customers and very large scale. What was underserved was everything below the pyramid at that mid and lower base. And what there wasn't in ticketing, so there's this payments thesis of online payments. People will buy things online and not just stuff like physical goods that you'd find on Amazon or other marketplaces. But then secondly, that the live experience, people coming together in real life, is something more than just the biggest concerts or the biggest sporting events, that there's this whole world below it. And if Shopify existed, I'd kind of point to a company like Shopify that really didn't serve the largest scale merchants. It served, and it still does primarily serve, all these smaller merchants that kind of have their own business and can now support themselves. And so we've built this following of.
But Kevin, it's 2006. There is no Shopify. What did you?
You would say that.
I mean, actually, a real question. What were the main forms of pushback when you pitched the seed? I made up the Live Nation thing, but I'm kind of curious. When you're pitching the seed, when you got to know, what was the main reason you got to know?
One venture person that I won't name said, "You're like a flea on PayPal's ass." So that we were like a little niche business. The TAM part is very hard, and that's the bottoms up analysis. Like, how do you put together like, 10K runs and small music events and wine tasting? Like, it was very hard to find out what the size of the market was, or to determine the size of the market. Then a lot of it was creative.
Right. It's a famous non-consumption case, and obviously, many examples of this. Uber expanded the taxi market; it didn't eat into it. Okay, so like, how? What's your advice to me? Say, if I'm a founder and I'm trying to figure out how to pitch something, and I am going to create demand. Like, how did you do that with Eventbrite? Did you just, call friends until you found someone who could believe?
So I'm a really poor salesperson. So we
can tell.
Built a really great product. Thank you. We built a really great product, and it was very compelling. And we showed, what we call, instead of GMV or TPV, these acronyms for gross volume. We sold a lot of tickets and started to make money. And we did it with very low cost of acquisition, and just three of us. So we were very.
You got the flywheel working early.
We got the flywheel working early. It was back in a period where SEO was very interesting and a strong driver. It still is, because people would produce unique content. We had free events, are free, and they still are. If I could go into the future in 2020 and say that, and that kind of continued this flywheel. And the other thing is just that's important is never rely on funding. What happens a lot of times is that founders will say, "Oh, I'll do this, and then I'll get a seed round, and then I'll have a Series A."
Yes.
You can't rely on it. You have to have a plan B, C, and D. But if you do go out and fundraise, I love going out just to say 5 or 7. If you're going to a venture fund or even angels, don't go out to too many where you forget everyone's name, like that guy in the red shirt.
So should people not raise from Founders Fund, and should they just self-fund their business?
Well, if it's a really good business, they should come to me, Kevin at eventbrite.com. But Founders Fund's okay as well. So is Sequoia. But,
right, that makes sense.
The best, to be honest, like if you can bootstrap a company.
So venture capitalists are somewhat overrated, in your opinion.
Well, you're manipulating my words, but
obviously,
so much, yes, absolutely. Like, they're what would I say? I don't know. I'll say, I won't say any too sharp words, but look, investors provide two things. They provide capital and expertise. And in some cases, like you're looking for an extraordinary founder, and an investor just wants to be a shareholder, a stock picker in a sense and find talent and help accelerate their business with capital. That's a reason to raise. The second, which is more the path that I've taken, is I love to learn. Like, I'm really interested in learning, despite talking to Daniel Gross. Ooh, snap.
That wasn't that bad. We've done better. Go ahead.
Okay, but I'm curious, like our Julia and Renaud, we were very curious people. We love to learn and we love the mentorship. And that's what, say a Sequoia Capital, which is more hands-on.
Is there a reason you're picking Sequoia Capital? There are many venture funds. I'm just curious. You seem to...
Well, we've worked with Sequoia twice, and so they're a known quantity. But
all right, now we're turning this into a roadshow for a bunch of billionaires at Sequoia. Which, don't get me wrong, they're the best.
But look at Notion. Look at Notion
of the firms called Sequoia.
A great product that didn't really need the typical venture founders and venture investors, and it's done a remarkable job. So there's no right or wrong answer. You just have to go if you want a lot of hands-on help. There's the benchmarks and Sequoias and others. If you want just straight money, if you want, there's the wonderful thing.
Where do I go to if I want straight money?
Well, that's more of a founder's fund, but it depends on if an investor is very busy. Like founder's fund is founder centric, and so they're hands off. They'll let you run their business. They want to find they found the Elon Musk and they found the Mark Zuckerbergs, and they know they're going to be. They don't need, the hand holding and everything.
No, the Mark Zuckerbergs will do all the work. And then what is the value of the venture capitalist in that world?
Well, like in that world,
many people have been wondering.
Well, no, in that world, it is providing capital in cases where the capital wouldn't be there.
Right.
In some reputational value. But if you feel that you don't need that assistance or can get that assistance from advisors, like before we could raise money, everyone turned us down like 1,000 times because you can hear how not good my pitching is. And it forced us to create a really strong service.
That's interesting. That's interesting. So your poor salesmanship actually, you think, helped Eventbrite?
Yes.
That's interesting.
Like if you,
I like that you've turned your weakness into your superpower. That's very good narrative building.
You got to lean into your strengths.
Now, is your hair always like that, or is this kind of a COVID special, what you got going?
Well, when I kind of get frustrated, if you have a live entertainment and experiences business and then people stop going to it.
The shape of your hair is inversely correlated to your stock.
Yeah, well, it's in reverse order, right? The lower the stock goes, the higher it gets.
Yes.
And soon and it feels like we're back at our not soon, but it's like we're back at our Series C price these days. So hopefully we won't go back in history too far.
I remain optimistic, and I think the interesting thing, of course, everyone at Eventbrite must be thinking about now is, while real world events, obviously currently remain in question, the human desire to want to connect with other people is evergreen. And I'd imagine you're having all sorts of interesting conversations about how you can power, cloud raves or virtual conferences. There's an opportunity here that could be, in fact, much larger than physical world events. One that Live Nation doesn't hold any contracts on.
That is very true. The point about that is, and I think this is worthy for early stage companies, is if you have a core belief and a core focus on your business, don't blow in the ways of the wind or so we happen to, Renaud, our co-founder, a couple of years ago, started to build online events because people started to use it organically for online events. And it was like a side project. And then this COVID thing happened and it just blasted off. We're doing 20,000 events a day. However, it's growing from a relatively small base. And, maybe in the future it would be healthy, but our core of our business is still much around the self-service, small and mid-size, like everything under the sun of Ticketmaster. And that's what we're, as we refocus and have to make these difficult decisions in this environment, we're refocusing around our core. I would argue that, we're following the footsteps of great people like Steve Jobs stepping in.
Eventbrite just needs to remember what Eventbrite's great at.
Yes, and that's that core self-service business that we'll get back to. And moved into many different areas and made a lot of investments, you know, in terms of
it's back
product
to basics now.
like that, and now we're going to refocus and we're going to survive this, and then we'll thrive on the other side. So Brian Chesky, Airbnb, is going through something very similar, where I would argue that hotels, the old incumbents, are going to be so crippled after this that Airbnb, where you're affording
the phoenix will be reborn from the ashes and be stronger yet again. Hey, Kevin, thank you so much for doing this. You are entertaining in your stoic yet humorous manner. Your hairstyle remains second only to Aaron Levie at this point, I think, in terms of its level of bluff.
Well, then I have something to strive for in life.
You have something to strive for, both, you know, in margin and hairstyle when comparing yourself to Box. And I very much hope we get to chat more soon. I have been told we are unfortunately out of time. And so this marks the end of this chapter of our conversation, and hopefully we can continue again soon.
Really a pleasure. You have a beautiful kitchen.
Thank you. I made it myself. Just kidding. All right. So now I get the fun task of, we have two final things coming up, I think. Jackson, let me know if I'm crashing the airplane here. But I think we have two final things coming up. One is, of course, we have the announcement of who won the live stream presentation, who got the most audience votes. But I'm actually going to hold off. I'm going to hold off for a minute on telling you about that, because we have, speaking of Apple, a little bit of just one more thing. We're going to make a fun product announcement right now. Hopefully captivating or leveraging some of the attention we have about a fun experiment we're going to run. And I'd like to walk you through it. Thankfully, I don't have Kevin here to critique my deck, thank God. But I'm going to share my screen just for a moment. All right. So hopefully everyone can see my screen here. If not, well, I have no way of finding out. So I really hope you can see it. I would love to walk you through the Pioneer Challenge, which is a new experiment we're going to be running over the course of May. You know, often startups are faced really with this problem of really good founders who don't really know what to build. We see a lot of these people on Pioneer. And it often comes in tandem with another problem folks have, which is finding customers to talk to about what you might want to build is hard. You know, it's of course easy to build software for yourself, but you know, in enterprise software, there's so many interesting things to build where you may not be the immediate prospective customer, but getting to people and interacting with them and figuring out if what you're building is right or not is hard. And so we are going to attempt to help you with that. We are going to attempt to fix both of those problems for you. This is what we're calling the Pioneer Challenge. It is a monthly challenge to build a specific product with a specific goal in mind. The Pioneer Tournament will continue as usual, but we're going to launch in tandem with that the opportunity to kind of focus everyone who's interested on a specific kind of thing at once. So we're hopefully going to get hundreds of teams to kind of compete and build the same thing. The winning team will be formed into a company, get a $10,000 investment, get introductions to 5 trial customers who will have given them feedback on their product and progress. And importantly, the people who will be making the kind of final arbitration call on who's good and who's bad aren't experts, they're the customers themselves. It's kind of an interesting feedback loop in a way. At a high level, the kind of rough format, and then I'm going to quickly walk you through, is that we're going to start off by just having people register, describe a little bit about themselves. And then over the course of every single week, people will have the opportunity to kind of progress from doing customer research on this thing to building a prototype, to an alpha, to a beta, and further. So the first step, thank you. The first step is to register with a little bit of information about yourself. And you can do this by going to pioneer.app/May and apply with some information about who you are, and importantly, some other projects that you've built that speak a little bit to the fact that you've done some fun stuff on the internet. You don't have to be pedigreed or have a big background or big degree. Just show the world some interesting links of what you've built. The hardest task you're going to have is, you can see right there in the project title, you're going to have to come up with a name of what you want to call whatever that you're building. So hopefully that doesn't take you too long. You can start registering today. After that, on Sunday, we're going to take everyone who registered and we're going to do a group audio-only Zoom call. And this will be a fairly low-key manner for you to potentially meet some of the other players competing, maybe find a co-founder, and just get a sense of kind of who's around. Again, no video, audio only. You can be anyone you want in the world. Every Friday, you'll be submitting a video to Frontier, either a demo or a video to Frontier about your progress. You can also use Frontier to vote on the progress that other people have done. Our customers then will subsequently pick their top favorites. Note that you can submit to Frontier software that you've built, an actual prototype, like a Loom walkthrough, like the one you see here, where you're kind of just detailing your progress, but no PowerPoints, please. So even though I'm using Keynote for this, you're not allowed to submit something like that. And then every Sunday, we're going to take the top submissions, send them to these 5 prospective customers, and they're going to kind of click on what they think is most interesting. And then we will cut the group in half week over week over week based on who the customers think are most interesting. The winning company will get a $10,000 investment. We'll take them from being a project into a company in return for 5% of the company. We'll introduce them to all of these customers, and hopefully the team will be off to the races. So this is kind of what the calendar looks like. You can kind of get a sense. Registration is today, starts Wednesday. We're going to do that call on Sunday. And then every single week, you'll be doing demos, and we'll be cutting down the number of active players in this challenge from 50 all the way down 5 weeks from now to our 3 finalists. So it's kind of like March Madness, except in software. If you don't want to work on this, but you happen to know a great team and you refer them to us and that team wins, we will only retain 4.5% of the company and give you 0.5% of them. Zendesk is $8.5 billion company. So that would be hundreds of millions of dollars in equity value if you happen to refer the winning company. And so, as I just alluded to earlier, you may be wondering, what is the challenge for May? What do we all build together? Well, we think a really interesting thing to work on would be a new form of Zendesk. Zendesk is customer support software. It's an $8.5 billion public company. It's used by many different startups, large-scale companies, and it's good, not great, and it's time to build something great. Now, here, scattered before you in a minute, you're going to see some interesting ideas for what building a better Zendesk may be. And I'm going to walk through them quickly, too quickly for you to really pay attention to what's good and bad. That's because you really need to do the research. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But at a high level, how would you make a better Zendesk? Well, a couple of things come to mind. One, being able to immediately show every customer service rep a kind of reportive style context on the Salesforce entry of the customer that they're talking to. How large ticket is this? How important is this customer? You can kind of manually configure this in Zendesk today, but making it automated, we think, would be a killer feature. High value customer alerts when an important customer emails in, based again on Salesforce integration. Robust kind of customer identification and authentication. You know how sometimes you email support and you email from the wrong email and they don't understand who you are and it takes forever? Fix that. Make the interface as fast as Superhuman's email. Make it very easy for companies to remove PII if the customer accidentally sends it into them, which is a huge issue for a large business. Send responses that look normal. You know, we all get responses from customer support software and you kind of immediately get the sense that it's like not a real human. Have the responses look like a Gmail reply. Keyboard shortcuts. Build in text expander, which is incredibly popular amongst customer support. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, I don't know what any of this means. What is he talking about? What is he talking about? Well, that's okay. That's okay, because really the first goal that you would have would be to find customers to talk to about this. One of the reasons why we picked this particular project and task is because, unlike, say, building software for CFOs, there are thousands of users, customer support reps you can interview. You don't have to go email the CEO of a company to get a sense of how to build customer support. In fact, the CEO won't know. You want to email someone on the front lines of support, and there are thousands, tens of thousands of these people you can easily access an interview. So doing customer research here is pretty easy. So next steps for you. Next steps for you would be, if you're interested in this, if you're not working on something and you're kind of thinking to yourself, man, the world is on hold. What should I do with my life? Well, if you can code and you can make software, this is an interesting opportunity. You have to come up with a name, which I happen to think is probably the hardest part of this whole adventure. Visit pioneer.app/May, make a little entry for yourself, and register, ideally by Sunday. And that is our first Pioneer Challenge. This is an experiment. We're going to try and run it together. And if it ends up working, then I don't know, we'll do more of them. So hopefully that wasn't too boring, and we still have just a few people on the live stream. But now, as I promised, I'd like to announce the winners. Just before that, we have one. No, I'm kidding. We don't have any more content for you today. We do have one more very, very important thing I'd like to do before announcing the winners, which is I would very much like to thank the team behind Pioneer for making all this possible today. Jackson for being our kind of fearless MC and pilot throughout all of this. Rishi for building all of the infrastructure and software behind the scenes, which hopefully you guys have been using and enjoying. And a whole other bevy of people that help us build a broader product. Again, I'm merely here to present the cake to you. I'm certainly not the one that baked it. Anyway, it is time. In third place out of audience voting today, Pulse Industrial. Thomas's work that was very much critiqued by the venerable Kevin Hartz from Eventbrite, who provided his stoic yet somewhat comic feedback. In second place, ToDesktop. This is Dave from Ireland, who's building a kind of instant desktop app builder off your website. And in first place, we have Monitoro, Omar from Germany. Now, you may also have been staring at this for the past 20 minutes, but we figured it's also useful for us to confirm ratings, just like accounting firms do after American Idol or something. Anyway, thank you everyone today for listening in. Hopefully this was enjoyable. Send us your feedback. Check out our May challenge. Or if you're already working on something you're excited about, you can of course check out the regular Pioneer tournament, which remains ready and open at all times of day. Thank you again, and we hope to see you all soon. Stay safe and have a good week.